Now this section is all about asynchronous processes handled in Redux. Now you know the basics of Redux. There is also another challenging scenario with Redux when you have to configure asynchronous calls. Why so? Let's understand. So here you see that we have the login component and we have the login reducer, that is the place where the logic with action is defined, and the state is also changed here in the login reducer. So here when you say dispatch, that means it's going to pass this object literal. When the username from the dropdown is selected, it's going to dispatch the action login and also going to pass the login details. The moment this dispatch is called, it goes to the reducer. Here the action type will be matched and then the respective code is executed. Imagine that in the very same case, we want to have a process, that is when the user is selected, we want to fetch some data, we want to validate the user. So this means dispatch is not directly going to call the reducer. Instead, there is some process and this process is going to take time. It is a kind of impure functionality. Well, in JavaScript, we have pure and impure functions. A pure function means you know what's going to be the output. In case of impure, it's not sure because it's going to fetch the data. So the asynchronous processes are impure only. And one thing is for sure, inside the reducer, we do not put these asynchronous processes or API calls, as the reducer should contain only pure functionalities. And API calls, being an impure function, cannot be placed inside reducer. As such, as per the official document of Redux, by itself, a Redux store doesn't know anything about async logic. It only knows how to synchronously dispatch actions, update the state by calling the root reducer function, and notify the UI that something has changed. Any asynchronicity has to happen outside the store. So this means ideally, how will you do this? If you consider this login and login reducer JS scenario, let's say we want to have another function in between saying validate user. And here we are not going to make an API call, but I can use set timeout to mock the asynchronous call. So it will look something like this. We will have the login file, the dispatch. Now this dispatch will actually make a call to a function here, and then this function, after the API calls and validations and processes, it dispatches the final object to the reducer. So this is the kind of flow we are going to configure, but that we will do in the next lecture. So when you put this validate user inside the dispatch, that is the action creator pattern. We have already discussed action creator pattern in previous section, and we will be discussing with the asynchronous processes in more detail in the coming lectures.